Well, yes, indeed, it is time for the final part of our first round of action in the RaceRoom Ranked Championship 2023 of Season 1. Of course, we've already done racing in the MX-5s, we've already done racing in the KTM GTX Trophy, and this week it is time for the turn of the GT3 Pro Series, the season opener for the championship as we finalise ourselves up here at Autodrome Moss, the tricky, twisty 4.2-kilometre circuit ahead of us. My name's Lewis McGlade. Alongside me is Ewan O'Leary for today's action. And of course, Ewan, you were on with the KTM GTX Cup, and it was pretty good fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. It's made me look forward to this round of the championship of the GT3 Pro Series a little bit more as well. Coming into this, I thought that Most would be very, very difficult to overtake on. Thought we wouldn't see much action around here, to be honest, but it was anything but in the KTM GTX Trophy. We didn't even need the reverse grids of the Mazdas to have the same kind of action. It was very enjoyable. We don't even have two races to look forward to here today, just the one 1 hour affair, but I still think that will bring the action for us because I've been impressed with this circuit over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't watched the GT3 Pro Series and the RaceRoom Ranked Championship, the few seasons that we've had thus far, of course, the 60-minute race will include one mandatory pit stop as well as qualification, which is presently underway. The circuit, though, that we're racing on is, of course, Autodrome Moss. I said before, it was about 4.2 kilometres in length. The twists and turns of it being incredibly difficult. That's what opened our season before we go to Road America, Brno, and then, of course, ending the season at the Nordschleife. You just have to. And the weeks between those will be filled with the MX-5 Cup and the KTM GTX Trophy. So plenty of racing. MX-5 Cup will be racing at Road America just next week. Let's take a look at the circuit, though, that we're racing at and the 21 turns of it. About 4.2 kilometres in length. It is a tricky test. You've got that first chicane, the tight right-left chicane, before you go up towards that awkward sequence, the hairpin of turn 10. You've got the fast-flowing section between 13, 15, and then that S's section afterwards before you get down to those two awkward right-handers at 20 and 21. I think it's a great track, and actually, painfully so, it's one of the very few in sim racing I've actually not raced at.
Yeah, I've not raced at the circuit either, but it's quite unique to RaceRoom to have it on a simulator, actually. So that's good to see, and Brno as well is one of those that you don't see very much of in sim racing, but glad to have this on that on this calendar as well. But yeah, it's all about the twists and turns really. There are very few big stops. There's that one in towards turn 1 where they've actually added a sharper chicane than what was originally built there when this circuit was opened. It used to be a flowing circuit all the way through, but that doesn't mean there's some slowing points around this circuit. In other places, the penultimate corner actually turned 20 at the bottom right of your screen there. It actually turned out to be a pretty decent opportunity in the KTMs, and there was also a sort of half chance in towards turn 5, 6 and 7 as well, which is sort of the first S's section as you get towards the end of the first sector. So there is more to this circuit than just turn 1 in terms of trying to make moves.
Yeah, and it had got precedent of being raced in by GTs. The ADAC GT Series has visited here for a couple of years, 2018, 2019, that kind of period, as well as motorbikes, WTCR, truck racing. It's all come here. Here's what we're racing in today, though. GT3s. Of course, you can see from top to bottom there the GT3s that we will be racing across the day. The Audi R8, the BMW M4, Bentley Continental Evo, Callaway Corvette C7 GT3R, my personal favourite, just saying. Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, McLaren 720S, and the Mercedes AMG GT3, along with the Porsche 911 GT3R. I'm just going to touch on the Porsche very, very briefly because, and I'll give it a bit of a shout out as well a bit later on the stream. Also, if you are into your Porsches on RaceRoom, be sure to check out across social media, and of course, if you're on the RaceRoom Discord as well, there'll be a sneak preview for the new Porsche DLC. That will be the sneak preview of that will come out tomorrow, so you can keep up to date with all of that kind of which I mean, new cars on the service is always a fun little prospect. So I know you like yourself a good Porsche, so fair enough.
Yeah, looking forward to that. See what is to come. But we've got a few Porsches in this race as well, just as you can see at the bottom of your screen. But some of those who will be up towards the front in this race, I am sure, with Christian Grosjean in my favourite livery of all time. I was having some arguments after the Nürburgring round of the 2.4 hour we did a few weeks ago. I was having some arguments about how good that livery actually is with some people in RaceRoom who clearly don't agree with me. But it's here, along with a few others as well. And a nice mix as well, as you can see here from the central list.
Yeah, it's, Mariusz Zabdir comes in as the highest rated driver. Luciano Wittfurt, of course, looking for the clean sweep in the opening round of the RaceRoom Rank Championship. He's won in the overall, of course, in the MX5 Cup and the KTM GTX Crossbar in that fantastic battle with Enzo Filipao, Christian Grete, Balázs Nagy, Felipe, Julien Vigneron. Of course, a few other ones to look out for, the two Mackenbergs. Yuval Rosen, of course, winner in the 2.4 hour of the Nordschleife. Philip Dreiss is looking absolutely rapid today. Cherdron, Vusterik. There's a lot of big names on this grid. One of them also Julian Kunze, who's not done too much in the form of rank race. We see him around every now and then. Proper esports specialist, he might be the driver to beat. But let's be honest, Luciano Wittfurt, I don't know. I'd kind of like to see him complete the sweep, if I'm perfectly honest.
Would be nice to see, and I think he did have that season. I think it was the second season of the GT3s. This is the only championship, by the way, we've held throughout all of the ranked championships that we've had over the last couple of years. I think Wittfurt was the driver to finish almost second in almost every round last season, but still didn't win the title. I forget who beat him every time now, but I think it was him who was up there constantly, and you'd expect to see it again here in the Bentley. Doesn't always drive this. I think he's been in the Ferrari more recently, and various others as well. But as you said, Kunze has got off to a good start here, quarter of a second ahead of the field, and that's quite a big margin when you consider the gaps between the rest of them, because the field is not exactly spread by a very big margin.
Yeah, there is no return in this from our champion in the GT3 Pro Series, two-time champion, at least as far as I'm aware, Max Pfeiffer, who is the one that's not on the grid. You're absolutely right, by the way. I say absolutely right. You're almost completely wrong, but that's fine. He did finish second. Luciano Wittfurt did finish second in the second round of last season, whilst also looking quite strong in the season finale, but ended up, I believe, third in the championship, behind Vermeulen and Pfeiffer. Pfeiffer being the two-time champion. We are in qualifying, though, and in the final stage of it, and Julian Kunze with a mega lap time, the only driver into the 1 minute 29s, and he is in it just. He is set a 1 minute 29.996, so that is about as close as you can get.
Yeah, we can barely count that, to be honest. And by the way, I'm getting a bit mixed up with Vermeulen now you say that.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, that was very clever of me. Lorenz has just moved up the order then to fourth place in one of the BMWs. And that is not a huge improvement in lap time, actually, but it is enough for second row of the grid for the moment, such as the closeness of the times. In fact, he's only 800ths off of Wittfurt on the second position at the moment, just illustrating quite how close this qualifying session is. And somewhat of a surprise, especially in sim racing, is to see people still improving more than 25 minutes into this long of a session, because normally when you get a session of this length, there becomes a point where just nobody's improving anymore, but there still are a couple of purple and green sectors hanging about.
Yeah, certainly so. Like you say, Luciano Wittfurt's flying at the moment, trying to do something about Julian Kunze's pole time. I will say BMW M4 looks pretty strong. Looks like the powerhouse. Oh my goodness me, that was a big moment from Maximilian Lorenz. 4 of the top 6 are BMW M4s. Lorenz bails from that lap time. Won't have enough time to get back out of the session. Luciano Wittfurt's one is also gone. Julian Kunze's looking fairly secured in his pole position at the moment. Christian Grete is the only car inside the top 5, by the way, that's not powered at the front of the car, and that is of course because he is driving your favourite Manthey Porsche. No favourites from you, I know that. So Julian Kunze out of the final corner. It's not going to be needed to improve, and it won't be an improvement anyway, but either way it looks as though the first pole position of the season is going to be going the way of the German, unless someone else can pull something very special out of the bag on this final lap.
Would have to be something very special, and in any case, Kunze is out there just having started a little lap that will end just before the time runs out. So if he needs it, he does have one last chance to go that little bit quicker. But other than that, the time has ticked down now to a point where nobody can start any new laps. You've got to deal with the one that you're on and go quicker on it, as Marvin Mackenberg is trying to do right now. Doesn't look like it's going to happen for him, unfortunately. He's see a driver in the KTM series that we saw last week, as his brother was Sven as well. They were both there, but running close together as they always seem to do, and they're not too far away from one another on this one either. The driver just behind him, by the way, is Zabdir, one of those drivers who's competed in all 3 championships this season, which I think is going to be something to monitor over the course of the season, because it is 12 weeks of consecutive hard racing.
Yeah, we'll see what Philip Dries can do, by the way, because lap time-wise, he only needs to improve by a few hundredths of a second to get himself onto the front row. The NeedRacing.com driver, who's got plenty of experience elsewhere in the world of sim racing, as well as here on RaceRoom, into that final complex at the moment. Could be good enough to put himself onto the front row and put it all BMW M4s to make it an ugly front row. We'll have to wait and see if he can do so. Comes up towards the line, and Philip Dries is able to do it. Crosses the line, goes to second, just behind Julian Kunze. A fantastic lap time, but not enough to challenge for pole position. As qualifying comes to a close, it is Julian Kunze on the first pole position in the RaceRoom Rank Championship 2023 Season 1 GT3 Pro Series, alongside Philip Dries, Luciano Wittfurt, Lorenz with those few issues towards the end of the session, Christian Grötter in a Porsche inside the top 5 with Mikkel, then Marvin Mackenberg, that is Marius Zabdir, Sinan Kunai, and then Sven Mackenberg rounding out the top 10. Fantastic lap time there from Julian Kunze. Like we said, the only driver to get inside those, get below a 1 minute 30, really is impressive.
Yeah, it is. He's only just about got there, but we'll give it to him. And in the end, wasn't challenged by anybody. Dries did a good job to get close towards the end there, but couldn't get anywhere near him in the end. It was a 10th and a half. But it's still enough for the front row as well. Now the start's going to be very interesting, because we saw 2 starts in the KTM series, of course, which I think is a lot more close to this series in terms of how the cars are compared to the Masters, certainly. And maybe we can draw a little bit from that. The starting grids we saw there, or the 2 starts, I should say, saw the pole sitter easily hang on through one of the races, but then the second place driver quite easily overhaul the pole sitter in the second race. So I just wonder how that is going to change things. I think the point is, things can very easily change in towards this turn number 1, because it's the tightest corner on the circuit. Yeah. It's really, really difficult to get through any incidents that happen in front of you, as we saw especially in race 2 last week. And part of this is going to be staying out of trouble, as it always is at a standing start, a start like this.
Yeah, certainly so. Well, the race has got underway. Philip Dries has led from the start of the grid. Julian Kunze is the one trying to challenge into that first corner. It is Dries with the whole shot into that first turn. He'll hit the apex. There's contact in the background, though, and that will be a big drama for Julian Kunze. I'm sorry about that, but it's Lorenz who's gone round. The correction is seeing Philip Dries holding onto the race lead, then Luciano Wittfurt, Christian Mikkel, Marvin Mackenberg, and then Julian Kunze, who had a few problems into the first corner.
Well, that was very, very messy from everybody. One of the BMWs going very nearly all the way round. Grötter getting into very near contact with Gunnar there, I think, in the Ferrari. And now they're side by side towards the hairpin for some of them. That's Kunze looking up the inside of Marvin Mackenberg, trying to regain some of those places. But that's exactly what we saw in the KTMs, I suppose. Some incidents in towards turn 1, and they're hard to avoid when you get into them as well. Some people have lost many, many places off of this start.
Yeah, certainly. So, like you say, a couple of slip and slides through that first corner. It's very easy to do through that chicane. It's Philip Dries, though, trying to pull away. He's got a 7/10 gap. That's a big mistake from Sinan Gunai, trying to attack Christian Grötter. Gunai is off the road. He is dropping right down the order in that Ferrari. I think Christian Grötter has also been pushed off the racing line, because he's dropped back behind Marius Zabdir and might well have a couple of problems, as Alessandro Botti's trying to send it around the outside. They're heading up towards the penultimate corner now at T20. That Mercedes has got the inside run, and is it going to have the position? The answer to that question is absolutely, and Alessandro Botti moves his way up into 7th position.
Yeah, I think Gunnar then broke too late himself. Obviously set himself off the road, but I think he made contact with Grötter on the way through as well. So that's not ideal for the Porsche driver, as Kunze tries to make up some more places in towards turn 1, and he will need to do this quickly as well, so as not to allow Philip Dries to get too far away. It will be a good exit from him through turn 2, as it's all kicking off back here all over again. Lorenz is really back in the middle of the pack and finding it quite difficult. By the looks of things on this second lap, as Sven Mackenberg tries to become the latest driver to overtake Grötter in towards turn 6, and he will get into 8th place.
Yes, Yuval Rosen was one that's actually was the one that was causing some problems into the first section. He was the one in that black Porsche going all over the place. Of course, the 2.4 hour Nürburgring winner. There he is, defending from that AlphaTauri Ferrari of Alfonso Alexandra. A couple of chops and changes in the background, along with the yellow flag being brought out by Sanchez, and Kevin Sanchez, despite driving that Rover BMW rather, not catching the real world Spa success and dropping right to the rear of the field.
Well, that was a half attempt as well from Lorenz, who's now going to be eaten up by Norge, I think. Oh, well, it's going to be close, and there's contact. The The Audi goes around, knocks into the wall and the gravel, and now Lorenz puts himself in the middle of the road so as to block everybody behind him. He's got Alexandra and Rosen trying to go both sides of him, but the track's just not quite wide enough, and they've all dived in towards the penultimate corner together. Rosen has lost a few places. He'll get one of them back from Krevy into the final corner, but it's a real mess in the midfield. A lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, Yuval Rosen just unable to get anywhere near an apex as Marvin Mackenberg is feeling the pressure from Julian Kunze, the pole sitter, trying to work his way back up the order. He's being closed down by Marius Zabdir, who's had plenty of success. As we'll see if Julian Kunze can get past Marvin Mackenberg. Issues for Christian Grutter into the first corner, and I think that Manthey Porsche is being dropped right the way down the order. To the back it goes. There must have been some form of issue, maybe car-to-car contact, maybe a solo error, we are unsure. But at the moment, there is this battle for fourth. There is also the battle for the race lead, because Luciano Wittmer has set the fastest lap of the race as he's charging up the back of Philip Dreiss, as once again Christian Grutter brings out the yellow flag. I think his tyres are toast.
There must be something else clearly going wrong for him back there, unfortunately, and he's not the only driver to have done so. Fortunately, every single one of the drivers has continued on from the first 5 minutes, and they're still at least running at this stage, but it's not great news for some, because it's been a very, very messy start, especially in the midfield. In fact, Rosen's rises and falls so far are a good indication of how it's been going. I think he started 21st or something along those lines, got into 11th by the end of the opening lap, but then back down to 15th at some point on lap 2. So he's just been up and down like a yo-yo. Now he's finally found himself a bit of stability in this race, but goodness me, he's been through it already in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, which is obviously not what you want. I mean, you can overheat your tyres, you can push them to the limit when you're going up and down the order like that. It's not a great feeling inside the car, not great for the confidence either. But once things start to settle out, that's where you can start finding the lap time. 5 minutes complete into the race. Again, that pit window sequence opens in the middle portion. And what they have to do, they have to come into the pit lane, and they're required to, in their mandatory top, to take a minimum of 2 tyres on their stock. So depending on how you're feeling about it, whether you take 2, 4 or however else, as I think there's a bit more of a problem from Alday at the back of the field.
Looks like it. And, well, all the bottom 6 or 8 drivers or so, I would say, have had problems. Even Balzas Nozu found himself backwards in the wall almost at third last proper corner, turn 17. Even he's doing all right at the moment in 24th. Now Rui Felipe is off the road, he's up to 23rd. So it's been very, very messy for the bottom 10 or so. But the battles haven't stopped further up. There's Dreiss versus Wittmer for the lead, but also Mackenberg versus Kunze here, which is an interesting one, because the pole sitter did seem to have a bit of an advantage over the rest in that opening half-hour session, but is an hour going to be long enough for him to return himself to that place after the start he's had?
Yeah, well, it's like I say, long road ahead for a few of these drivers, and with that 5-second gap up to the race lead now from Julian Kunze, it feels like it's a little bit too deep for him to grab, but we know his pace. We saw it in qualifying. Problem is, every single lap he's behind Marvin Mackenberg, he seems to be bleeding even more time, while the top 2 seem to check out. Alessandro Botti feeling the pressure from the big bad Bentley that belongs to Sven Mackenberg. Look at that in the distance though, because Julian Kunze has made his move. Has he actually made it stick though? That's the question. The yellow flag comes out because of Cherdron, but I think Julian Kunze has worked his way up in the 4th position on the exit of the 2nd corner as they work their way through the S's up towards T10 and the hairpin. It is the pole-sitting BMW that's worked his way back up into 4th.
Really threw himself over those curbs on the inside line there of turn number 1. There's some very annoying, well, not very annoying to be fair, they're actually quite well placed, but they're anti-cuts on the inside, and if you're trying to find your way down the inside, you'll bounce over them very quickly. Kunze has been able to deal with that, and he's through into 4th place, allowing Marius Zabdir to get close to Marvin Mackenberg as well. The Bentley seemingly not able to stop going backwards early on. One of the Audis going to try and come through in the form of Zabdir right under the bridge. Very close in towards turn 15. Mackenberg gives him the room, maybe a bit too much room, because Zabdir is able to rip round the outside at 16 and get through into the top 5. Yeah, sadly, by the way, I think we do have our first retirement from the race. Marco Cherdron has retired from the opening round of the GT3 Pro Series here in the RaceRoom Ranking Championship of 2023. So we do have a retirement to add to the list, sadly enough, whilst there have been a few issues. This is a brutal track, and it does indeed bite. Gravel traps that lead straight into barriers. It's a tight, twisty circuit. It's one where curbs are quite large. They can send you off into various barriers. It's a difficult track.
To be fair, that's kind of why I actually quite like it. It's a fun challenge. It really is. It's something, like you say, we don't typically see in the world of sim racing. It's not it's not like going to Spa for the 70,000th time between July and August. It's something different to chuck for our drivers, as it seems as though Prinder is feeling the pressure from Bartalos as the slides from those behind him, the Hungarian unable to apply the traction well out of TT.
Very difficult really when you're on the inside at turn 2 to get the run around the outside there, because it's actually quite a long run until the next braking zone. I know oh no, Prinder's off entirely. Oh, and he's hit the wall as well, quite hard, and that was very unexpected, I've got to say. He all seemed to be going very well until it wasn't, and he's straight in the wall and dropped more than 10 places as a result. Well, I didn't get any signs that things were going wrong for him there until he pretty much found himself in the gravel, but that seemed a very innocuous entry to that corner, and things just went wrong through the middle. I can't quite understand how he lost that.
Yeah, very, very odd indeed. Well, this is up towards the front of the field. Philip Dreiss, Luciano Wittfurt, the top two now has been closed in. Philip Dreiss with a decent start to the race, had pulled out a decent margin, and now has been pulled in. Luciano Wittfurt. Of course, they do have the teammate of Philip Dreiss, Christian Mikel, further down the order. By the way, I hadn't even really realised this, because obviously Philip Dreiss races over on R-Factor 2. I didn't realise that it just clicked as being like normal. Oh yeah, Christian, yeah, no, I've commentated on him loads. Oh yeah, of course. I don't see him very often in RaceRoom, so shout out to Christian Mikel.
I was wondering whether it was actually the same person when I first joined, because he was here for I think both of the opening rounds actually. He was definitely here for the Mazdas, I seem to remember. Maybe he wasn't there for the KTMs actually. Maybe he was. Can't quite remember, but he's definitely been here for some of the RaceRoom Ranked Championships so far, and I wasn't quite sure whether it was him. so yeah, it seemingly is. And yeah, NevaRacing.com have got 2 drivers on the podium so far, but it's very, very early to start talking about facts like that, because Wittfurt is applying a lot of pressure to Philip Dreiss that you'd think over the course of 50 minutes will tell at some point.
I've got to say, they also have done a good job at picking the livery which is closest to the NeedRacing.com livery. It needs to be a bit more pink, but, you know, scores on the doors for that one. There is a lot of pressure there. I'm just kind of keeping a lap time, the eyes on the lap time. Let's see what it is this time, because I think Philip Dreiss hasn't been driving the tidiest of lines. Did think he lost out a little bit of time in that second sector. He'll cross the line this time and sets a 31.3. It's about a tenth slower than Christian Mikel, 2 tenths slower than Julian Kunze, who's just set a 31.018. It's not a million miles away from setting the fastest lap of the race, which happened to be a 1 minute 30.852 in the hands of Luciano Wittfurt, who remains right on the shoulders of Philip Dreiss. They head their way up through the SS section up towards turn 10. Awkward little section, this one, as you go through like the tight and twisty sections, sort of like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And there are a lot of different lines that kind of work, and when you're sat behind someone, you don't really want to follow their exact line. You want to kind of keep in their mirrors and maybe try and cause a mistake. So easy though to trip over someone in that occasion.
Yeah, it's very easy to get tunnel vision here as well, and just to follow exactly in the wheel tracks of the driver in front and not get in the mirrors, as you say there. Just, you know, ducking out every now and again would be helpful, but deciding not to on that occasion. They duck under the hill. He has a look in the inside at turn 16 as well, and this is the side of Autodrom Most we don't often get to see. The fact that there are so many corners that if you throw someone offline for one of them, then you might get a chance further down the line, and it's one of those circuits you have to work on moves for quite some time, but it's also one of those circuits that you lose a lot of time in a battle as well. Christian Mikel will start closing in quite considerably, and Kunze will as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if the top 4 are all together here before the lead actually changes. Yeah,
I mean, I think the top 4 will be together potentially heading into that first pit stop. That's the thing. It's just whether they're burning out their tyres. Whether, you know, like Christian Mikel and Julian Kunze are going to burn out their tyres far too much on the charge down towards the race leaders. whether they're just doing their own thing and it's the race leaders, in fact, that are burning out their tyres in doing so. This is the tricky nature of this style of racing. The yellow flag comes out. Unfortunately, it's for Rui Felipe. A few of these drivers that have gone really well in seasons past in the RaceRoom Rank Championship are finding some struggles this afternoon, courtesy of the circuit here at the Autodrome Most. Of course, the circuits that we're going to throughout the season, there are some difficult tests, and to open the season at a circuit like this is a brutal challenge, although thankfully I would take this one over the Nordschleife as a season opener.
Yeah, I would as well, but it doesn't make it much less difficult really, because it's just used so much less than the Nordschleife or most other circuits really. We've got Brno in there, as I mentioned earlier on, as a real odd circuit to have in there in terms of what you might otherwise see in sim racing. I don't think any other calendar in sim racing has this circuit and Brno on it, especially a championship so short. So yeah, it's very unique in that respect, but it's quite a good way of actually spreading the field out a little bit and diluting it a little bit, because typically in first rounds everybody thinks they can win the championship. Everybody has got so much ambition that it's a bit of a mess sometimes, especially when you're on a really well-known circuit. So if you bring them to a circuit that's quite as well-known at all, not quite as well-driven, well-practiced on, then you get a situation like this where people are a little bit more spread out, and some of those first round carnage moments are eliminated. That's certainly what we've seen so far.
Yeah, heading to unknown circuits can sometimes be a little bit more dramatic on that. By the way, when we go to Brno, I really do. In fact, actually, no, I'm not going to say I want to see it. I'm going to demand that we see Jaroslav Honzik take part in at least one of these, because I know he was very happy when Brno was brought onto the racing platform. So we'll make sure we'll try and make sure that happens. We'll have to wait and see. You can see in the top left of the screen, the pit window opens in around about 35 seconds, and we head into the middle half of this race. So once 15 minutes have been complete, I don't suspect too many drivers, at least from this top lot, will come into the pit lane early. Whilst it's a moderate tyre circuit, tyre wearing circuit, it's not ridiculously high, where going for a mega undercut's really going to be super advantageous. That said, Christian Mikel and Julian Kunze are beginning to struggle a little bit. This is the fight a little bit further down the order. 14th really is where the train starts. Radoslav Optal was quite close to the back of Bartolos, but you've got Balázs Polgar and Carlos Guedes right in the mix here for these extra few positions, as well as plenty down the order, trying to work their way back up, as is Maximilian Lorenz on his recovery charge on the back of Afonso Alexandra.
Yeah, he's got a lot of work to do, as Lorenz, and he'll do well to get back to where he started from, I would argue, but the pit stop window might be an opportunity to gain some of those places without really doing a lot, and in fact it's Alexandra who's going to take the first opportunity. Marius Zabdir does as well. This is the great thing about having such a wide pit window here in this series. Really open up the strategy options, because now for the next half an hour at least we're going to be working through these, as long as everybody doesn't cover everyone else off, and then it'll all be done in 10 minutes. But I'm not expecting that to happen. Zabdir is coming interestingly. Alexandra's call is an even weirder one, because he was in front of a driver, but anyway, he's decided to come in, and in fact 7 drivers have done so far. At the end of the opening lap, 8 drivers now.
Yeah, I kind of agree that it's a little it's a little odd that some have come in so early, or so many have come in so early. But I've got to say, in agreement with you, I absolutely love a big pit window. If you're going to have a pit window, make a big one. I don't like it when it's 10 minutes in the middle of the race, because there's only really 2 strategies in that. You either pit at the start or you pit at the end, because pitting in the middle is just sort of like, it's too half and half. Whereas something like this, it's big enough where you can kind of do an awful lot with it. You can strategize your way around it. And of course, one of the big things is making sure that when you come into the pit lane, you're coming out in as near as makes no difference clean air. Neither of these two coming into the pits at the moment, but you can see some of the slides coming in from the rear end of that NeedRacing.com car that Philip Dreiss is punching around Autodrome Most. Lucianovic for applying as much pressure as he possibly can without trying to do anything. And you can see in the distance there is plenty of lapped traffic. That is Luka Vutric, that is the driver ahead. And so there might be some lap traffic problems, which that would surely force them into the lane.
And there's a spin for Lukic at turn 16. Gounet is out the race as well after an incident down at turn 13, I think that was, for him. So unfortunate there. But yeah, there is going to be traffic here for the leaders. Prinder, for whatever reason, is having a really long stop and is going to come out a lap down on most drivers. Now he'll finally make his way out, but a long way behind. everybody else. Zabdir has found himself in a bit of clean air for the moment, but I don't know how long that's going to last. Well, in fact, it's not lasting very long at all, has it? I believe he's already up behind Rui Felipe at the moment as Piatkowski comes into the pit lane on the second time of asking. Yeah, Zabdir is already in traffic and in a little bit of trouble in that respect as well. So that could hold him back. It could help him, of course, depending on how many lap cars these leaders come on in the next 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, they're basically, to be fair, at this point, you're kind of hoping that because some of the drivers that are ahead of them, like Vistrik, etc., because they're on fresher tyres, you're hoping that they've at least got some decent pace to keep out way ahead of this group for long enough they don't have to worry about it. You can see how much traffic there was going down at the T1, so we're in the phase where it's only a matter of time before we see these venture their way down onto pit lane. I'll give you the rough semblance of lap times at the moment. Of course, Philip Dryce, by the way, has just set a 31.072. So his tyres are absolutely fine because that is only 700 slower than his personal best in this race, being a 31 flat. And by flat, I mean it's 0.000. Let's see Luciano Vitt having a couple of looks there, not able to make his way through. What I was going to say, though, is Vistrik's lap time, rather the lap times of those further down. A lot of them seem to be running in the sort of 32s. Vistrik's personal best in the race was a 32.228, so around about a second slower from a personal best standpoint than these two behind. So you're talking, I think, with that gap, you're talking another 4 or 5 laps before the requirement to come into the pit lane. So, strategise your way around that.
Yeah, we'll try and work it out. You'd expect these drivers to actually have a plan, though, a little bit. Obviously, it can't be too inflexible because you've got to adapt to the race situation around you. But these drivers will have thought about it before the race. They're not just trying to start to work out their strategy right now. It will be a thing that they will come into with a bit of a plan, but it also depends on the race situation and who you're up behind and so on. Because for these two leaders, it doesn't make much sense to pit and put yourself in traffic at the moment, because that's exactly what would happen. They've got to wait for a few more drivers to come in, or indeed the gap to those behind to grow a little bit more, even despite the fact Vitt is stuck behind Race at the moment. He's got to try and get himself in clean air for at least a lap or two, though, because it will be easier to overtake in the pit stops than it will be on this circuit.
Yeah, certainly so. Like I say, it's a very difficult circuit to make a pass at. It's not just that Philip Dryce is sat at the front doing all of the work. There's Luciano Vitt that's trying to save some fuel. He is trying to make some moves. He takes a little look down the inside. There was a bit of contact between the pair of them as Yuval Rosen makes his way onto pit lane. Lukic has had a bit of a problem as well about halfway around the circuit as he'll try and get himself back going as he drops to the rear of those that are yet to make a pit stop. There was a bit of a look, though, from Luciano Vitt that he was fancying some sort of move. But I think, like you say, it's got to be strategic, surely. But part of me is like, I hope it's not. I hope he goes to it. I hope he's got something in the tank to try it. He wants the clean sweep here in the opening round of the RaceRoom Rank Championship. He won in the KTM GTX Trophy last week. He won in the MX-5 Cup at the season opener a couple of weeks back. He's looking extremely strong and is certainly getting his money's worth on the racing platform, the amount of racing he's been doing.
He certainly is. And seems to be enjoying it as well, which is all good to see. And I suppose you'd have to be to do so much driving. But either way, going all right at the moment. Just around a third of the way through. 1 hour race and still plenty of this pit stop window remaining as well. Just wonder what's going to happen when these two leaders approach the lap traffic, really, because it is going to happen before they pit, I would imagine, and they're battling in front of him as well. I think it's Varga and Vistrik, as you said earlier. So really depends what they're going to do when they get there. The Vitt tries to dive in before they get onto the back of them. Would that give him an advantage? Would it put him in traffic for position? I'm not entirely sure.
There's a bit of a look still, not able to do so. Again, fantastic racing between the pair of them, but it's the pressure's being soaked up brilliantly, magnificently by Philip Dryce. Out a little wide going into T10, hook up a late apex and an exit the way off the corner with a decent drive to keep Luciano a bit for arm's length. I've seen a little bit in chat, by the way, discussing things about RaceRoom and stuff like that. Of course, RaceRoom is free to play if you go onto the go to the Steam service, and you can download RaceRoom through there. It's a free download. There's a bits of free content, but there are plenty of starter packs. But if you are looking to get involved in RaceRoom, now is actually a really, really good time. So I'm just going to touch on it very quickly, because for the next week or so, there is a summer sale going on present. It's up until July the 13th. I think it's up to about 50% off some things on the marketplace, 25% off others. Plenty of great stuff to get your hands into, and it's honestly, as much as some people say RaceRoom's, it's been around for a long time, it is still fantastic. All the new content that comes out is absolutely brilliant. It's so fun to drive, and it'll really invigorate your spirits when it comes to the world of sim racing, and get themselves back involved in it if you've kind of drifted out somewhat. Seeing a little bit of a move ahead, Luca Vutric trying to get past Stefan Varga, the two Swiss drivers battling over 26th position, and all that's doing is allowing these two, Philip Dreiss and Luciano Bitt, for the top two in the race, to close in. Look at the gaps though from behind, because I do think Christian Michel's closing in a little bit more as we round up. Oh well, there we go. That's what's happened to Luca Vutric.
Yeah, and that's what happened to Pip Kosky earlier on, by the way, and that's how he has been lapped by these two as well. An incident at the very same corner. So seemingly, that sort of change of direction between turn 6 and 7. Well, it's not even the change of direction, is it? It's the turn 6 left-hander. Even before they're trying to shift all of the weight for the right-hander at turn 7. Just finding themselves off to driver's left into the gravel and the wall down there. And that's at least the third time that, well, I've spotted it today anyway, and there may have been more around. So it's seemingly a very difficult corner, but it has proved to be a bit of a half chance for overtaking for Luciano Bitt as well. It's not been successful as of yet, but he's still trying, and he's got more than half an hour to do so as well, although you'd expect with the second half of the race would come more opportunities and a little bit more desperation, a little bit more urgency, maybe is the word, for Bitt in around 20 minutes time maybe.
Kind of would have expected one of them to come into the pit lane, as they can see the lap traffic is actually really quite close now. That one belonging to Stefan Varga in that BMW M4. This is the battle for 10th position. Bartolos, Polgar, Guides, look at that into the pit lane. Julian Kunze has made his way onto pit lane. You can see him dropping down now. He has worked his way into the lane. He's the first of the top 4 to come in. He was around about 1.7 seconds off of the rear end of Christian Michel. I think it was even closer than that by the time he came into the pit lane. This could be a wonder stroke from our pole sitter, who's had a couple of issues today dropping down the order. If he can get the up and under, if he can get into some clean air, this could be absolutely fantastic for the German. Well,
that's the key thing though. Is he going to get into some clean air? I think he might actually. He just slots in behind Grotter here. He's dropped quite a long way down. He's not made his stop yet. That's just where he's ended up. If he just gets in front of Orde there and Zabdir, then he'll be all right. But Zabdir might get through, and he does. So Marius Zabdir is in front of Kunze, and it's by a few seconds as well. Kunze was only about 4 seconds off the race lead, so the two out front here have got to not only worry about each other, but Marius Zabdir as well, because he's going to be a danger long term in this race.
Yeah, that is very, very interesting. Are they going to pounce and come into the pit lane? No, not for the top 2, not for 3rd place either. Christian Michel remaining out on the circuit. They've navigated their way past the lap traffic of Varga. So working out Marvin Mackenberg, is he holding tight? No. They're holding firm on the race circuit at the moment. So this could be very interesting strategically. And like you say, Marius Zabdir with the master play at the moment. I'll give you a bit of a rundown of what his lap times have been. Marius Zabdir's dropped back towards 31.721 on the previous lap time. So I think, despite making an early stop, I think he might be struggling a little bit on tyres, whether he's only taken 2, maybe Julian Kunze's taken 4, things like that. Which, to be fair, if there's a circuit to take that kind of gamble on, this is probably it.
Well, I'm astonished that the top 3 haven't come in, or none of the top 3 have come in, because I can't see how they don't see Marius Zabdir as a long-term threat in this race now, because of how far Kunze has come out behind them. Now, they may not actually be aware of what's going on. If they've got someone telling them, a race engineer or whatever, telling them what's going on in the race, then that's all fine and they will be informed. But if they're actually just on their own, then to be fair, they might not know. But surely someone's got to be in and cover him off here, because Zabdir's got about 10 seconds worth of clean air. He's not going to catch anybody. He's not going to get stuck in traffic anymore. He's going to be out on his own on fresher tyres than those two in front, albeit marginally, and they've got to cover him off. Now Luciano Vitfort does. Mikel and Drace both carry on, but it could be too little too late. I think Zabdir will be leading this race.
I think he will, but it's whether his tyres are still intact. Julian Kunz's got a lot of pressure ahead of him as he's trying to work his way past Alday, who's a bit of, not lapped traffic, but just traffic that hasn't stopped yet. And I think in doing so, he might have lost around about a second, just courtesy of where that was. So that might actually be advantageous, even further so to Luciano Vitfort by not stopping. This is the thing, is that there are pluses and minuses to both strategies at the moment. As you can see, Luciano Vitfort comes into his box. He'll come in, he'll take, again, the mandatory requirement is a minimum of 2 tyres on the stop. So, you know, stationary for that period. This will be interesting.
It will be very interesting. And Zabdir has played a blinder here. Now, already going. So, has there been a difference in the amount of tyres taken, maybe? Because that's a huge margin for Vitfort. Surely he's only taken 2, whereas Zabdir and especially Kunze must have taken 4, because that gap's huge.
No, I think Zabdir's taken 2. I think Zabdir has taken 2 tyres. I think Julian Kunze has taken 4. He's the outlier in all of that, because Marius Zabdir's pace has not been especially amazing compared to the top boys. It's not as if he's been setting purple lap times every single time round. I think he's just taken 2 tyres. I think it's Julian Kunze who is in the odd position of taking 4. I think a majority of this grid have taken just the 2 tyres of those that have pitted thus far. So Luciano Vitfort looking to try and take over the race lead. Clear space ahead, at least for a decent while. Philip Dryce, who hangs on to the race lead, not coming into the pit lane yet.
I'm very surprised about that as well. I would have thought Dryce would want to cover off Vitfort at the moment, but Zabdir came in only 8 seconds behind Vitfort before when the pit stop window opened a quarter of an hour ago. Zabdir was 8 seconds behind. He's just over 10 behind now. So I think whatever Vitfort and Zabdir have done, they've done the same. And it may well be 2 tyres each. And it looks like you are correct that Kunze has taken 4 because he's miles behind at the moment. And he's going to have to hope that the tyre wear is catastrophic for those in front for him to return to the podium again. But this is quite an exciting battle. They're all getting very excitable in towards turn 1 as well. Outside line for Polgar by the looks of things. And if you get round there, you can have the inside at turn 2 as well, but he's lost quite a lot of space on the outside there, and so he'll end up losing that 8th place that he held really so briefly.
Yeah, the 2 Hungarians, Hungary, to get in front of one another up to 8th position. Then Bartolos, Polgar, and then Guides. They had some fantastic fighting over the back end of the circuit through turn 20 and turn 21. They now head through turn 10 at the hairpin out wide. Kick of oversteer as well as we ride on board with Bartolos, looking back towards Polgar and Guides. Kovalevsky also closing his way in that Porsche behind. So look for those gaps to close their way down. Again, lap times from this lot considerably slower than those that have already made stops. It's actually a 33.4, 33.1 and 32.9. They are being closed on, but thankfully the gap to Luciano Vitfort is a decent one. But I've got to say, he's probably going to be closing down within the next lap or so, and he's got traffic rather from Sanchez, so it might not be an easy run as Sven Mackenberg and Christian Orban come into pit lane. This battle continues though for 8th position. Be risen up to 6th though.
Maybe Drace has been a bit more patient than me in thinking and seeing those drivers in front and thinking, you know, well, it's not ideal for me on this lap, maybe not the next one, but over the course of 5 or 10 laps or so, I'll be all right. So I'm glad he's not been as impulsive and impatient as I was a bit there to suggest he should come in straight away. I think it will work out for him eventually, and he's also gaining a bit of time on Mikel as well, which is ideal. 3.7 seconds, nearly 4 now, whereas that gap was closing to 3.0 not so long ago when Vitfort was still around. So that has just ballooned out slightly. Vitfort through on Sanchez then towards turn 1. I think he must have got that done on the brakes to little resistance, you would imagine. The BMW driver with no real advantage to holding the Dutchman behind, and so it's just the 4 drivers up front. But this could cost Vitfort a real lot of time, judging on the battle we were just watching.
Thankfully, his last lap time versus Philip Dryce was actually 2/10 faster. He set a 31.165 over the previous lap time. Philip Dryce set a 31.3, now a 31.4 as he remains out on the circuit. So this could be very, very big. But the big problem for Luciano Vitfort isn't the fact that he's just made his way past Sanchez. It's the fact that he's got Kovalevsky, Guides, Bartalos and Polgar all ahead. There is that green Bentley in the background as they race their way around. There is still, 13 or 12 and a half minutes left of the pit window sequence. Bartalos comes into the pit lane, nearly got cleared off the road by Guides behind. Kovalevsky also makes his way into the pit lane, and the Callaway Corvette works its way around the outside of T21 and obviously takes over that position courtesy of the pit lane entries. Lorenz and Botti also into the pit lane. Luciano Vitfort will be fingers crossed to the absolute maximum that these two venture their way into pit lane this time by, because at the moment I actually think that if that does work and Philip Dryce comes in as well, I think Luciano Vitfort will be taking the lead in this race.
I think so, but he's got to have that look on his side as Zabdi is going to get dived by Kunze, and that's too late on the brakes. There's contact, and Kunze goes around for the second time today. Pole position earlier.
Whoa!
They're one and he's just helped Sven Mackenberg stay straight forward there after a near spin off of turn 2. That was remarkable.
That was wild. Let's go with that. Absolutely wild. Like I say, incredible stuff, but a wild battle. Speaking, by the way, of wild battles, I've just seen a note on my screen. Julius Bartalos has just received a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So the Hungarian that was involved in that fantastic fight with Guides, Polgar and the likes, he will be making a swift return into the pit lane courtesy of speeding in it. A big shame. He's the only driver thus far that I've seen that has received a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and I can tell you it is easy to do and a very painful and sorry experience.
Yeah, it's very demoralising, I suppose, very frustrating as well to experience that, and unfortunately it's going to cost a lot as well at any circuit, but this pit lane does seem quite long as well. And the pit entrance is very awkward, by the way, as we just saw not so long ago. Thought Watkins Glen was bad. This is another level. That was really, really close a couple of moments ago. But anyway, most of the pit stops are done now. Drace will be one of those to come in very soon. Sanchez seems to be speeding down pit lane there, but maybe it's just the camera angle. He pulls into his box now and will drop outside the top 10. Who are we expecting next in? I'm not really sure there's a lot that Drace can do now. I think the only thing is to hope that Polgar and Guides stay out for as long as possible. Although he's in traffic as well, to be fair, isn't he?
I was going to say, I don't like the call to stay out there. I mean, to be fair, I think at this point, if Philip Dryce comes into the pit lane, he's going to be losing the race lead regardless. I think he will almost certainly be behind Luciano Vitfort, who is now working his way past Guides. Then next one up for him is Polgar, and then it's just plenty of clean space for Luciano Vitfort to do what he does best and set really fast lap times. Last time by, Luciano Vitfort 31.3 despite navigating traffic. 31.3, 31.6 for Philip Dryce. So that gap continues to switch around, and it was only 4 or 5 tenths before they came into the pit lane. He only needed that kind of time. As long as he nailed that pit entry and exit, which I think he most certainly did, it seemed as though the Flying Dutchman will be heading to the front of the field, looking to complete a sweep here at Autodrom Most to open the championship. I mean, he's looking fast this season. Let's just say that. It's not just the speed, though. It's the fact the strategy seems to have clicked. That could be speaking too soon, but right now, things look solid.
Things look very good, but I'm just wondering to myself now whether it's worth Drace actually taking 4 tyres and seeing what that will do for you, because we've seen so far with Kunze here, as you can get on your screen, he's been quite quick actually with those 4 tyres, despite not many of them around him to have that. That was good defending from Alessandro Botti, who parked his Mercedes right in the path of the German, and he's continuing to do that on the run up towards 5 and 6 as well. Kunze's going to have a look down the inside but can't do it. And I think without that spin with Zabdir, Kunze would have had a real chance at a podium, because let's not forget Marvin Mackenberg hasn't pitted yet either, neither has Christian Mikel, although that is until now. The top 2 are now in. I think this will hand the lead over to Vitfort.
Also seeing a little bit of talk in the chats. Philip Dreiss and Christian Mikel, the two NeedRacing.com drivers, enter their way onto pit lane. But again, I do believe they're going to relinquish the lead to Luciano Wittfurt. It seems as though the Dutchman's heading his way towards the front, up onto the jacks. Again, the two tyre requirement. Wittfurt being delayed a little bit by Polgar, who makes his way onto pit lane, out onto the start-finish straight. Luciano Wittfurt will go. Is it up now towards second position as Marvin Mackenberg remains out on the race circuit. We'll get the overhead view. You see on the left-hand side those two NeedRacing.com drivers, and it will be indeed just about, though, only by the tiniest of margins. This race is absolutely on. I would have said that gap was going to be much larger. Philip Dreiss, though, eyes on the prize, the race lead ahead, and Luciano Wittfurt will be feeling the pressure. Marvin Mackenberg yet to come into the pit lane, and they still have 7 minutes. What I was going to touch on, by the way, again, keeping my eye on YouTube chat as well. I know we're talking about a little bit about those Porsches, the Porsche DLC, which is on the horizon. Again, as I've said before, keep your eye on social media and, of course, on the RaceRoom Discord tomorrow, because there'll be a little bit of a sneak preview for that Porsche DLC. So keep an eye on that as well. 22 minutes left to go in the race, and this looks like it is going to heat up. Luciano Wittfurt versus Philip Dreiss, maybe a little bit of Christian Mikel in there if he can work his way back up towards the top two.
It's making me wonder, really, because Wittfurt has shown pace to be a little bit quicker than Dreiss so far in this race. That was a lot of rhyming. But yeah, I think for most of the first stint, he was just stuck behind the BMW in front, and now he's been unleashed. Now he's able to get away. Maybe this is going to be all over. You know, before the end, quite a long way before the end here. He's already pulled about half a second over the BMW driver behind, and it's clear to see now that it wasn't just Dreiss, it wasn't just Wittfurt. Both of them were in a lot of traffic, actually, towards the end of that stint, and that's said a lot about this race and the order so far. Traffic has had a big bearing on this race so far. It's worth remembering for the remainder of the season as well. We're not going to circuit as short as this one again in terms of the RaceRoom Rank Championship for the GT3 series. Road America, it shouldn't see too much that traffic, and neither should Brunel, or certainly not the North Side. But traffic is going to be a big factor in these races, because we've seen multiple battles settled by that. Just not this one, I don't think. I think they were roughly even by the end, in all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, if you're going a lap down on the Nordschleife in an hour, you're probably doing something wrong. Let's just go with that. Marvin Mackenberg into the final complex, remaining out on the race circuit. He is leaving it right to the end of the pit window, which closes in 5 minutes' time. He is not going for a no-stop. I can see Colin Blankenberg saying about that. He's absolutely not going for a no-stop, because that will end in one way, and it is with 2 letters, and they are DQ. So I don't think that's going to be on the table for him, as Guides completes his pit stop, comes out in 24th position. As I think when Marvin Mackenberg comes in and then comes out of pit lane, he'll probably be somewhere still inside the top 10, I do believe.
Yeah, should do, but I think it will be bottom end of the top 10.
Yeah, definitely.
And probably near his brother again, which always seems to happen. But we'll wait and see on that. Uwe Rosin is just ahead of this battle between Bert and Vigneron, who's quite a long way down compared to what you'd expect from him. I think he qualified quite well at the Nürburgring, didn't he? But then had a bit of a disaster of a race. And he's not having a fantastic one now, although he will be gaining 14th place in one of the easier overtakes he'll have all season long. Just letting the pressure get to him a bit too much there, and going very wide, and now he's got the 2 best looking Porsches ever made behind him. No bias. Kovalevsky and Grota should both get him into the penultimate corner.
Who knew that Ewan O'Leary just likes green? The greenest of green Porsches. As diving his way to the inside, Christian Grota, who's had really good pace today, was qualified right up the order inside the top 5. Unfortunately, a couple of issues early on in the race. He's had to work his way back up. Eyes on getting past Berndt and getting past Kovalevsky as well. Vigneron not too far down the road. A look down the inside coming into that first corner, and having a dive down the inside himself. Noj was giving it a go. The Hungarian trying to work his way through. Balash Noj unable to do so.
He hit Berndt actually as well in towards turn 1. Guides, I'm presuming, has got to drive through for speeding as well.
He certainly
he's
does, yeah.
back in again and will drop outside the top 25 now as well. But That's the danger when you're in one of these groups. If you brake a bit too late, you risk getting through on the driver you're battling, but also the one in front of them. And that is not exactly ideal. Mackenberg pits pretty much towards the end of the pit stop window. Only a few minutes remaining within it. He'll lose on a podium right now, and as we said earlier, will probably find himself towards the bottom end of the top 10.
Well, he's going to move in pit lane. He might find himself in 4th place. I think Mariusz Zabdir might just have this one on him. But actually, as he's leaving pit lane, it's not going to be the bottom end of the top 10. We'll have to eat our own words here, Ewan. Marvin Mackenberg out in 4th place then in this race. That must have been quite the pit lane sequence. You saw the rear end of the car being lifted up, just the 2 tyres being taken on that pit stop. Fantastic work from Marvin Mackenberg, now ahead of Mariusz Zabdir and Julian Kunze, by the way, who's closed his way in, or is closing his way into the back end of Mariusz Zabdir, an absolute rate of knots. There's currently around 2.5 seconds between the pair of them, but the gap's been coming down around 9/10 a lap. So I do believe that Julian Kunze will be able to get himself maybe up to the 4th position, but higher than that might be a bit of a tall order. There's Christian Greta down the inside of the BMW that belongs to Bernd, and it should be the position done, although that was so awkward. So awkward.
Far too generous from Grota there, arguably, through turn 2 to give quite that much room. Noj is going to take full advantage as well and go down the inside. Let's not forget that the Audi driver is slightly misplaced now after his incidents earlier on, but Grota arguably is as well, and he's really off the road there trying to make moves. That is not going to count, surely, although he's forced Noj out wide anyway, and they're going to run side by side out of the hairpin down at turn 10 and through the gentle S's at 11 and 12, which are barely corners in all reality, and then towards 13, which is a very high commitment corner, and they'll sort themselves out. But it's bizarre to see these two battling for such a lowly place, considering where they started this race and where they arguably should be in this field as well.
Yeah, but this is the problem: is that when you're around drivers of your calibre that are they're supposed to be towards the front of the field. When I'm saying your calibre, I'm not talking about you, Ewan. We would not be on this grid. But Christian Grota, Balázs Nagy, they're both fantastic drivers in their own right. They both realistically, pace-wise, should be inside the top 10. They've just so happened to find themselves both outside of that by a comfortable margin. But then you focus too much on fighting each other and not working your way through the field. They both have the pace to work their way back up, but when they're only focused on battling each other, whilst it's a battle of equals on pace, it's a battle for equals on pace, not where they should be fighting. Here's Alessandro Botti defending from Sven Mackenberg, who we're on board with. Kick of oversteer again off of T10 at the hairpin, heading through the light S's, as you so called it, up towards that fast right-hander at 13. Commits to it. I always found this part of the section, this part of the track, when I've driven it plenty of times, not actually raced it, this part of the track is by far the hardest.
Yeah, well, it all looks quite difficult to me, if I'm honest.
That's because you're not a good driver.
It's a circuit that remains very similar in character all the way through. You get some circuits where you can divide it up quite well into little sections where this is a bit more technical maybe or whatever, but it's all quite flowing and technical around everywhere through here. The only thing that really stands out for me is the chicane at the start of the lap, because it's sort of a more squared off manufactured corner. The rest of them are all very flowing corners, one leads into the other, and it's all very nice and flowing, all pretty nice to drive in the end. But just make overtaking that little bit difficult, and I think that is going to be the problem for Philip Drees here. He's just not quite quick enough to get close enough to Wittbert to push him offline, to apply that pressure, and to get through into the lead as well. He's certainly up against the odds at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, he, again, pushing the absolute limit of the circuit right now, trying to close in on the Dutchman at the front, but unfortunately the lap times are not in favour of the German. Currently the previous lap time was actually about a tenth and a half quicker from our race leader compared to the driver that's trying to chase him down. So the battle, once again, Alessandro Botti, Sven Mackenberg, and, of course, the Ferrari of... sorry, it's not even the Ferrari of Christian Orban, because that's actually the Ferrari of Ivan Lukic, who's on the rear end of those. Christian Orban actually a fair way off the rear end of them, but that blue Ferrari is one that's actually having quite a few problems today. I will correct myself. I've seen a few spins, I've seen quite a few yellow flags been brought out. Here's Julian Kunze then on the rear end of Mariusz Zabdir. Can he make short work of the Audi R8?
I don't think it's going to be short work, but well, actually, I'll maybe change my answer there, because Kunze's got the new tyres, hasn't he? Actually, that I've forgotten about. And these two did clash earlier on in the race as well. Now looking to the outside through the penultimate corner and the last turn as well. This will be very impressive if the BMW can manage it. He's been given exactly a BMW's width on the outside of the final corner. They'll run absolutely dead side by side in towards the chicane where they clashed not so long ago.
Yeah, this could be a good move. Let's see if he's able to do so. Julian Kunz is going to send it in deep on the brakes. It's been brilliant racing between T20, 21, and then through the first chicane. That was muscled out, though, by Julian Kunz. And whilst Marius Sabdir gave him the room through the final couple of corners, Julian Kunz was having absolutely none of it. Did not want a repeat of their earlier incident. That might irritate the pole behind. And there is the fight for them for 5th position at the moment. 5 or 4 and a bit seconds up to Marvin Mackenberg ahead. I've got to say, I think this one is done, especially when you see mistakes like that. Goodbye, Marius Sabdir. He's able to keep it on the road, but only just.
Yeah, losing his head a little bit there, I've got to say. Marius Sabdir was shoulder barged, really, by Kunze at the final, the second turn there. Maybe repaying a little bit the clash that they had earlier on in the race, but he's through now, and we'll see whether even a podium could be on the cards. I think it could be a little bit too far away with the amount of time remaining. Alessandro Botti has done all right to defend from Sven Mackenberg so far, but that could be about to change. It's side by side through the final few corners that are just under the bridge there, but Sven Mackenberg has got a very long way round to the outside at 17, so it's not going to happen on this lap.
No, certainly not, as again, it's still a good little fight. Villacrevi and Christian Orban are closing in. You can see the pair of Porsches behind them. They are closing in very quickly as well. So I think we could be seeing quite the large fight. I think that also is Alfonso Alexandra behind. So it could be quite a fight for the final few positions inside the top 10. There is Alfonso Alexandra. Of course, has to navigate the lap traffic that belongs to Ivan Lukic as well. But this could be quite the fight over the final 10 minutes. You've got these two that seem to be the two at the front of this battle between Alessandro Botti and Sven Mackenberg. They seem to be struggling on their tyres an awful lot more than the pair of Porsches and Ferrari behind.
Yeah, they do, and I think it's worth noting the amount of difference that Kunze has made with those new tyres as well. Maybe that's something to factor in, especially at Brno, where there's a lot of corners similar to this one. And maybe less so at Road America, although it's still technical in its own right as well. So we'll see on that one. But Kunze's been everyone a bit of food for thought over the course of the next 3 weeks before our second round of this championship in the GT3 Pro Series. Of course, this series the only one where we're really looking at tyre choices and whether to pit and how many tyres to take at your mandatory pit stop as well. Just adding that little bit of an extra layer to the action over the course of the hour that we have here this evening. But for the most part, it's been 2 tyres for everybody, and people kind of stuck where they are for the moment, other than maybe in this battle for 7th place. There's Kunze, though, gaining time all the while. He's going to run out of time, though, for a podium.
Well, there is just 10 minutes left to go in this race. Still plenty of time for a potential battle, but realistically, it's around about 7 laps of racing. Luciano Wittfurt hanging on to the race lead by half a second. Philip Dries has been doing everything that he can to try and keep that gap, from growing too harshly. At the moment, I'm not convinced Philip Dries has much that he can do about taking over the position from Luciano Wittfurt. It's close, yes, but it's such a difficult track to overtake at. You need a mistake from Luciano Wittfurt. If there's one thing that he's been over the last few weeks around Autodrom Moss in the Racing Rank Championship for 2023, mistake making isn't one of them. Yeah,
and it's all well and good being close enough, but close-ish, but if you haven't got the speed to go through, you haven't got that extra little bit over the top of the driver in front of you, then you're not going to go anywhere. So that is going to stay the same, I would imagine. And I'm surprised that Sven Mackenberg hasn't been able to manage this yet. I thought going around the outside at turn 17, or attempting to, was not a good idea, actually. And it's now invited Orban and Crevi to get into this battle as well, and battle between themselves over being the best placed Porsche in the race as well. But Mackenberg needs to get this done earlier because he's now got a lot of invited pressure from behind with those two in 9th and 10th.
Yeah, one battle, by the way, is also getting quite a bit closer. Marvin Mackenberg, Julian Kunze, because Julian Kunze, over the previous lap that he completed in this race, he set the fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 30.697, beating the previous best by a tenth and a half. Julian Kunze is flying at the moment, trying to catch down on Marvin Mackenberg. The previous lap time, he only closed in, though, 0.3 of a second. He needs it to be faster and faster. I will say, Marvin Mackenberg, though, this shows his pace and consistency. If you look here at the bottom of your screen, best lap of the race, a 1 minute 31.353. Previous lap of the race, a 1 minute 35.358. Really close to that personal best that he set much earlier on in the race, showing that his Bentley still has plenty of speed, and he needs to use every single bit of it over the next sort of 5 or so laps to try and hold on to 4th position.
Yeah, it certainly does. I don't think it's going to be enough, though. I think whatever happens, though, he's going to go away from today thinking, I could have won today, based on the strategy that he had, based on the pace that he had. And when you think about the fact he's had 2 spins in the same chicane over the course of this race as well, after incidents involved with other cars, he'll be really disappointed, because I think the 4-tyre change and that strategy could have actually worked out for him, and maybe that's something to work on over the course of the next round. But at the moment, he's just got to focus on getting that 4th place and just limit the damage if he's going for the title over the course of this championship. A top 5 will be all right, but then you need to start gaining points on Vitva, and that's going to be very difficult to do over the course of the next 3 rounds, because, as we said, he's very consistent, and it's going to be difficult to take points from him.
Yeah, indeed. Like I say, it's an interesting start to the season, but with those issues for Kunze, as you've been saying, I mean, like I say, yeah, it's easy to be like, oh, you know, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and all that stuff. But you've got to look at like previous results in various championships. I think, didn't Balázs Nagy win the AM, which was the touring cars last season? Didn't he win that without winning a race? If I remember correctly, certainly he was very strong. He was definitely up there in the championship.
Yes, yeah, he tested me there, But yes, he was one of those up there, although there were about 73 other drivers who were in contention for that title at the time. I seem to remember it was absolutely incredible, and the best championship I think we've had to date so far, of the 5 that we've had over the course of 2 seasons, another 3 this season, of course, back to the 3 championship structure. But yeah, I think so. Hopefully we can get a championship like that in one of the 3 this season as well, because the finale we had at Interlagos to round off the touring car season in 2022 was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, it was the F4 Rookies was the other one. I'm trying to remember what it was last season. The F4 Rookies, the WTCR Trophy, which was the AM category, and then, of course, the GT3 Pro Series. As you said, the only one that's actually taken part in all 3 of the seasons. Wow, that was a proper send. And to be fair, I can kind of see that one. Christian Groer absolutely launched one down the inside of Balázs Nagy, and yeah, Nagy wasn't having any of that.
No, and I don't think Grotto would have made the corner on his own there.
No.
To be fair, Nagy could have maybe cleared the nose there before turning in, because he would have got the place back anyway. But anyway, I guess you haven't got time for those kind of things when you're in a race and you've just been dive bombed at turn 15. So he's going to continue on with his day without a second thought, I would imagine, and Grutter is going to end his day there by returning straight to the pit lane. So that'll be it there, but brought on by himself, you'd have to argue, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is very sad indeed. Like I say, I mean, there's always with instances, there's things that both sides of the party could do, for sure. But you've got to be said, that was ambitious, is the way I'll put it. That fast right hand at the top of the hill, it's a tricky one to get a move down the inside to absolutely launch ones, and not normally the wisest port of call. I will say Julian Kunze, with this literally about what I was about to do, we saw Luciano Vitva, who's now pulled out 1.5 seconds over Philip Dries. 3 laps roughly left to go, so plenty of time for him to actually soak up and enjoy this one. He's been absolutely phenomenal today. Has Luciano Vitva, the driver who beat him in qualifying, along with Philip Dries as well. Julian Kunze trying to get himself inside the top 4 at the moment, right on the rear end of the Bentley that belongs to Marvin Mackenberg, his compatriot. Sat there in 4th position. It would still be a top 5, of course, but still, yeah, you want to get as many points as you can to try and limit the damage that has been dished out by Julian Kunze with a couple of issues in that first chicane, and potentially the incorrect strategy as well.
Well, I don't know I suppose we'll never know whether it was actually incorrect or not, because he's not had a clean race so far. But I'd be willing to back this 4-tyre change. Maybe it would only work at this circuit because of the amount of twists and turns within it. But even so, I think it's been all right for Kunze this race. We'll see if he can indeed get that 4th place though and limit the damage best he can. At the moment, he would lose 16 points to Vip already, and this would only limit it to 13. So he would need to. We would still have quite a job on his hands, I would say. Although winning every race, he would be guaranteed the title. I know we're early on for thinking about those kind of things, but I am doing already.
Yeah, classic.
That's no surprise, really. But yeah, he's just going to try and do what he can, really, and get these extra 3 points, and I think he should be able to manage it, although he's only got 2 laps remaining.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you think that those 2 spins have cost him 15 seconds?
Maybe not that much, but you've got to think about the amount of time he's lost in traffic that he shouldn't have done as well.
Yeah, but that's you're always going to if you're going to make that 4-tyre stop, because you're going to lose time, so you have to get it back. So you've got to make it. I don't think 4 tyres was the right call.
I'm not willing to go either side fully, because obviously we're not seeing. But I'm thinking especially about that first stint. I know now, obviously, this is not abnormal to find yourself in traffic with a 4-tyre stop, but in the first stint, all things going well, he would have got pole and kept the lead through turn 1, which is what he has to do, and then have that clean first stint where he's just absolutely pounding around, shredding the tyres basically, and then pitting about halfway, changing all 4 and then going again. I know he'll have traffic in the second half of that stint, but if things go well, he should have a cleaner first stint than he did today.
Yeah, well, he's going to try and make a move here in the same place that Christian Grotte sent one down the inside, this time not absolutely firing on the brakes as the Manthey Porsche did earlier. The outside line as they head through the S's section, that could be a brilliant move from Julian Kunze. There's contact between the two, as it would be Marvin Mackenberg turning in a little bit too early over the rear quarter panel of the BMW M4. The position is not complete yet, though. Marvin Mackenberg is going to try something into the penultimate corner. Surely he doesn't have the grip comparatively to Julian Kunze, who's going to give it a go, but Kunze in that BMW M4 with 4 tyres is just able to hang on. They'll come round to the start-finish straight to begin what I believe will be the final lap of proceedings here, as Marvin Mackenberg is giving it a go back.
He's got better straight line speed with the Bentley and is drawn alongside and in front of. In towards the first turn, he's got to make sure he doesn't dive too deep on the brakes, and he has done. They'll be nice and respectful through 1 and 2, but the outside line gives you a much better exit, and Kunze is through into 4th place on the final lap. A very good pass from him, and I think he will be able to hang on to this now with Marvin Mackenberg. Very few straights left to make use of that Bentley's biggest strength, and you can already see the tyre difference there, and maybe the handling difference a little bit as well. Kunze looks pretty good now for that 4th place.
Yeah, he had that move done maybe at the wrong place. He was almost sent straight back down into 5th. Got to say, though, into the final sector of this racetrack, Luciano Vitford with 10 seconds left on the clock. He will be coming round into those final few corners. Well, as we said before, he won in the KTM GTX Trophy. He won in the MX-5 Cup as well. And as he comes across the line, it will be the clean sweep and confirmation, at least here in the Racing Rank Championship. Autodrom Most belongs to Luciano Vitford across the line for the Gatacane Ballas Esports team. Luciano Vitford on top, ahead of Philip Dries, as 2 NeedRacing.com drivers make their way onto the podium. Dries ahead of Christian Mikel. Julian Kunze is only able to recover his way to 4th position after pole position. Issues into T1, a couple of half spins and such, into 4th place with Marvin Mackenberg, making it 4 German drivers inside the top 5 on a brilliant afternoon of racing. But it is Luciano Vitford with a fantastic drive from 3rd to 1st and a strategic masterclass. Absolutely. He just seemed, over the course of a race distance, to be honest, just seemed quicker than those around him, as Yuval Rosen finds himself somehow off the road at the penultimate corner on the last lap. He'll finish 13th. Vitford was comfortably stronger than the rest, you'd say, winning by 1.7 seconds. Well, there we go. Taking a look at the provisional order, Luciano Vitford on top, Philip Dries, Christian Mikel, Julian Kunze with the fastest lap of the race in that final stint, with Marvin Mackenberg in 5th place. Marius Zabdir, Alessandro Botti, Sven Mackenberg, Christian Orban and Villa Cravey are the drivers that are able to round their way out of the top 10. The rest of the drivers on the field, Alfonso Alexandra, Radoslav Obratau in 12th position. Then we get Yuval Rosen, of course, the Nürburgring 2.4 hour winner in 13th place. 14th belongs to Guillaume Vigneron, then Kovalevsky, Balázs Nagy, Oliver Berndt, then Balázs Polgar, Rui Felipe and Stefan Varga rounding out the top 20. Luka Vutric, Radoslav Piatkovsky, then we get Bartolos O'Day, then Carlos Guedes, and then issues for Ivan Lukic throughout the day. Martin Prinder having his fair few set of problems as well. Christian Grutter with that massive send late on in the race retired him for the race, along with retirements from Kevin Sanchez, Sinan Gunay, and then of course Marco Cedron and Maximilian Lorenz to round out the field. But you got to say, massive credit to Luciano Wittfurt. Played his cards brilliantly to beat out the two next needracing.com drivers of Philip Dreiss and Christian Nickel. But the questions really will be levelled towards fourth place in the race, Julian Kunze, and what could have been.
Yeah, I think so. And those are the questions that he'll be posing himself, I would imagine, after that race as well. But it's promising for the rest of the season that he should be able to be up there competing with the rest, but it's going to be hard now to go against the consistency of Luciano Wittfurt. I think anyone outside the top 5 in that race will struggle to overhaul him in this championship. As we've said before, he's come close in a couple of seasons now as Wittfurt in this championship. Never won it, but he's got a great chance to do so here. I think he'll have a bit more of a challenge on some of the other rounds, but this one he maybe ran away with it a bit more easily than maybe you'd expect on all of the coming rounds. But even so, it wasn't entire domination, and that's not what we're going to see all season long. It's going to be a little bit more complicated than that, but he's definitely the favourite after this opening round.
Well, as you can see here on the screen, we are done here with Autodrom Most. In 3 weeks' time, we'll be back for the GT3 Pro Series at Road America. But do not forget, the Mazda MX-5 Cup will be around in just a week's time. And then a week after that, the KTM GTX Trophy will be back for its second round of the championship before we have the GT3 Pro Series returning its way to the race circuit. As we head to the United States and to Road America, Elkhart Lake, a fantastic race circuit in its own right. And what strategy will we see on that day? Other little bits of housekeeping as well. Of course, please do remember, if you've been watching all of this stuff for RaceRoom and you fancy getting yourself involved as well, you can go onto Steam and download the RaceRoom game through Steam. And of course, now is probably one of the best times to jump on, because as you can see, it is the summer sale at the moment until July 13th, so just over a week's time, up to 50% off in the marketplace on RaceRoom as well. So that's, again, absolutely fantastic. There's so much great content, and hey, maybe you'll find yourself racing your way onto the grid here as well in the RaceRoom Ranked Championship. Another little thing just to touch on, I have touched on it a couple of times as well, there is a new Porsche DLC on its way. And I've said before, check out social media and the RaceRoom Discord tomorrow for a little bit of a sneak preview. Either way, that is us wrapped up here this afternoon. So a big thanks, of course, to Captain Coffee, to Chris Doe, who's been bringing us the broadcast, to my co-commentator in Ewan O'Leary. I've been Lewis McGlade. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in a week's time for the Mazda MX-5 Cup, of course, as we head to Road America. Until then, though, have a very warm goodbye. Oh.